Good afternoon on this rainy day here in Oregon. I have a fellow Oregonian with me. Her name is Kellie Spooner Gnain. I hope I have that. Did I butcher that name? Did I get it right?
You got it right. Thank you.
I got it right. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about her studying of shamanism and what that's led to, and we're also going to touch on the extraterrestrial and the channeling factor as well. All the way up in Portland, the beautiful suburban Portland, Oregon. Kellie, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying this rainy weather.
Me too. I'm an Oregonian at heart. I love it. I love it. What
I'm
I'm curious
excited to chat with you too. This is fun. This is my first interview, actually.
is it, well, I'm sorry it had to be kind of on the fly like this. I'm still getting a little bit of feedback. Make sure you mute your mic when you're not talking. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you was when did you start to become interested in the supernatural, into shamanism? I kind of lump it all into one category. And where did that road start and where has it taken you so far?
Well, I found a book by Edgar Casey in my childhood home that was left there by my grandfather. So he was interested in Edgar Casey, and then as a kid, I read that and I was interested in the Bermuda Triangle. It started off like that, and
Okay.
then yeah. Hang on. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I wish my grandfather would have been into Edgar Casey. Yeah, totally great. He, channeled the Arcturians, I know, and his stuff is pretty dead on. I mean, I found that his stuff was about 95% spot on, and the other 5% was just I mean, he was the first person to really channel out in the mainstream, so he didn't have anything really to gauge off of what he was getting. So pretty good for winging it.
Yeah, and then as a kid in my own family, I wouldn't say that I felt like I belonged on another planet, but I definitely felt like I was different somehow.
Right.
So those were sort of my childhood feelings. And it's interesting because as I become an adult, I look back on all this childhood stuff differently, right? I also went to a Catholic childhood or elementary school, and I would remember uh, stories about Jesus as though I was a friend of his. And
Yeah.
then later on in church, that wouldn't make sense. Like the stories they were telling me didn't make sense at church. And then
Yep.
later as an adult, when I reflected on that, I was like, oh, that's because I had a past life memory. you know?
Yeah. Right. Well, did you find that? Okay, so you found one of the versions jived with you more than the other, or neither one of them did?
About Jesus's life, the
Yeah.
stories about him, the parables that I heard resonated 100%, preaching to children under trees, anyone, healing the sick, all that. And then when I'd go to church and it was like, repeat what we mean about the Pontius Pilate. And I'm just like, what is
Uh,
this? Everybody's saying this stuff in unison. It was creepy.
It usually is. It's been the only place I've ever seen a demon in my life was in an actual church, or thought I did. It's really weird. It's kind of a mindless dribble of every Sunday morning and every Wednesday night. But I mean, really, they don't really. They're totally opposite of what his true teachings were. It's really kind of an interesting paradigm.
Oh yeah, and you'll see in my story that we're coming to disclosure about all things right now. So the ETs are one thing, and then the true history is another thing. But anyway, with my how I picked up all this extraterrestrial and esoteric information was kind of like fast forwarding through my childhood to moving out and turning 18. I learned how to explore self help. And I wanted to know the true Jesus, so I picked up A Course in Miracles. I was invited to, I was studying midwifery, and in that community, I was invited to study shamanism. And
Mm.
how was I drawn to shamanism? I was just like, that sounds fun. It sounds viscerally fun to dance around a fire instead of sit in a pew looking forward, holding still, being told what's right and wrong all the time. Shamanism felt freer to me. I just wanted to explore it.
Yeah, so you didn't feel like, okay, so when you got into shamanism, it wasn't, you weren't drawn to it by any, because of any kind of a psychedelic drug one or psychedelic experience, right? Like a lot of us have been. I mean, so you were just, it just appealed to you. You didn't, did you look at the psychedelic aspect of it as far as the ayahuasca, DMT, things of that nature, LSD?
Okay, well, I have mental illness in my family history, so I was always very careful with drugs. The only
Right.
thing I ever did was marijuana. I was curious about everything else, so I would study the beatniks, and that whole
Yeah.
all those
Culture.
philosophers, right?
Hmm.
So I knew that there was a place for psychedelics for mind expansion. I wrote papers about altered states of consciousness, which I could do because my experience with marijuana was almost like psychedelic. Like
Hmm.
I would be the one at the party stoned having philosophical conversations that nobody else could follow.
Right. No, no, I've been there totally. The psychedelic thing, I've really only had a psych experience on it once, and it was the first time I ever used it. It didn't really, you're lucky, it really didn't do that for me. I had to, use deeper, a little bit stronger, things like that. And I suppose going to the school that you did, right, there, it wasn't very prevalent. I mean, I joked with you about how lucky can you get going to an all girls Catholic school. Um, so it probably wasn't very prevalent in your area, or I mean, in your,
Right. No, I didn't have access to anything. It was very hard to find anything. I was very much a purist, not interested in getting in trouble in any way. Just a clean girl growing up. And yeah, and then shamanism was just fascinating. I learned how to do the shamanic journey using drumming. Our shamanic. I did take classes with Jan Englesmith in Gresham, Oregon, through Light Song School of Shamanic Studies, and for 1 year, I did the level 2 with her. Level 1, I did with Lori Shansky. That's just learning how to do the journey, and then I did Reiki attunements 1 and 2, which was at the recommendation of Jan Englesmith. And then I did level 2, which is a monthly meetup where we would practice a few journeys during the group circle. And they taught me that I could take any intention, any question I have, and go into this meditative trance with just simple drums. It's a light trance, it's not deep, and just play around in my imagination with gurus and angels or animal spirit collectives and ask them for their perspective on that issue. Again and again, that's what the shamanic journey does. You just take your questions and your intentions. And we were told over the centuries, right, that this is bad, you're going to get hurt, that's dangerous to explore that, but that's all programming. So everybody is a shaman now. That's the message I'm getting from my guides. Everybody is their own personal mystery school right now on planet Earth.
Yeah, you are your own guru. Guru. It spells it right. You are your own guru. And right, of course, tapping into that is evil, right? I remember I can still hear Pat Robertson on the 666 Club talking about how if you meditate, be careful not to moan too loudly because you could summon the evil Hindu yoga gods. And I'm like, fuck, dude, you can't make this guy's crazy. It helps you tap into other realities, right? It into other realms. It takes some practice, and I don't know if it's something you have to be careful with, but I suppose it's something you can't take lightly either. What do you think?
Intention is very important, and being conscious about your intention when you do any sort of energy work is step number one. And once you do that intention setting, which I all day long before this interview, I've been meditating, grounding, and praying that my guides are with me during this conversation. So, when you want to contact a spirit guide, you just need to say, I am love, and I'm listening to love right now. And you hold that intention energetically in your heart or however you figure out works for you. And that's all that you need. You just give the source creator that is love um, your permission to influence you on whatever you're listening or seeing, and
Yeah.
trust that that's happening. That's my process.
Do you still run into a lot of people that are naysayers about it, like that, talk about it being dangerous and that, oh, you're contacting evil spirits and all that? Do you run into a lot of that? I mean, we live in a pretty liberal part of the country, so I mean, I wouldn't think it would be like it would be somewhere in other regions, but do you still run into that from people, or do you just kind of not deal with it anymore? You know what I mean?
Well, yes, I feel like that is going to be a huge obstacle for every individual to overcome. It's just like when you're on social media and they want to gaslight you.
Yep.
The programming is that we were taught not to trust channeling intentionally, so we could have an experience of separation from our divine guidance. there, that was actually intentional from the Godhead's perspective, because that's all an exploration of free will. So we're collapsing that separation now, and we're all uniting back into a consciousness of unity. And it's unfortunately going to look like having boundaries with people who don't understand you. And I've
Yeah.
been practicing my boundaries, especially really strongly. My collective, who's energetically sharing all of this with me, I know a lot of people in my life, in my circle, that have been working on boundaries. And that's it. I've learned how to make boundaries with people who don't understand me. So I don't care if people think this is evil. I know that's a stage they're going through in their judgment process and their
Mhm.
forgiveness lessons. So it doesn't bother me. But yeah, there's going to be more of that ahead. Like I said, this is my first interview, and I probably won't share a lot of the really um, controversial stuff that I am channeling, because it's extremely controversial what I'm
Yeah.
channeling, because I'm channeling the truth about Jesus that was hidden from the Bible.
Right. And that's okay because there will be other times and other formats, all in divine time, like you said before the show. So that's fine. That's okay. And I know time's a little bit of a crunch today, but and when you do separate, I mean, when you do put people at a distance that you've had to remove yourself from, I want people to understand that it's not like an arrogant thing or anything. It's just we all have our different growth paths and we're tuned into different frequencies sometimes. So I mean, that's just the way it has to happen. I mean, I've heard people throw that out there and go, "Well, I've had to really separate and it's one thing when you're saying it out of drama, but it's another thing when you're saying it out of because you really need to for your own spiritual growth." And I mean, I think it's going to get rockier before it gets better. Of course, people are going to really have that are starting to become aware of this stuff, right? That don't realize they're aware of it or becoming aware of it. They are having issues with. They're having issues because a lot of them don't know what the hell's going on, but they know something's going on. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally. And what I want to say about creating boundaries with people is that you can do it in a loving way. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be like you cut them off and you never talk to them, you never explain anything. It can be just a gentle distancing where you don't answer every phone call, you don't reply to every text, you delay a little bit. And then if you wait until you feel called to explain it to them, the right words will come, so that you don't break their heart in the process of creating boundaries. And the reason this is so important is because, think about that quote. It's actually, the longer quote is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. We have soul tribe that we have contracts to work with in this life, and we cannot allow karmic relationships to influence those soul contract dharma that we have to accomplish. We can't get distracted, and that's what those boundaries are about. They're about lovingly saying, look, mom or sister or whoever, I love you, but you don't understand me, and your energy is distracting me from my goals in life. So I'm going to lovingly keep you at a distance so that I can be polite, because if I don't, I'm going to get rude, because my
yeah.
energy frequency cannot entangle with yours, or there's conflict, and I'm aware of that. So to avoid anybody getting hurt, I'm actually going to keep you at a distance but still send love.
Beautiful. It's very beautifully put. I mean, that's all you can do, really, too. And you really have to do that. You can still be there for them if they need it. They're still there. It's like this split they talk about. We're off on two separate frequencies, and people are in their own frequency. So you may not, that person may be just miles away from you, but and you could call them anytime, but you don't because they're not on your vibrational bandwidth at the time. So it's one of the things right now where everybody's got to go deep into their own journey and see where that takes them, right? And do what feels right to them. And
Yeah.
there's, yeah,
Yeah, everybody has their own unique path of karma to deal with in this life. And if I try to have a relationship with someone out of obligation, I might actually be hurting or like enabling them, when the goddess wants to be firm with them, wants them to learn the lesson without being rescued. That's a lot of what's going on. A lot of people who have vampire energy are actually wounded. And if we allow them to take our energy, we're enabling them. That's what I learned. I learned that I was at fault of leaking my energy to people who didn't deserve it and didn't value me.
right, exactly, right. And you are, and it's a hard pill to swallow because you really want to try to help everybody, but you can't. I mean, you're trying to get help, figure it out yourself still, and You can't be bogged down with that. You can lend a helping hand if they, have a question about something or whatnot, but you can only take it so far.
Yeah, and it's a divine masculine energy to create boundaries with people, but men and women have it both. We all have masculine feminine inside us, but the
Yeah.
boundary setting is a masculine energy. And if you think about it, it just channeled this kind of metaphor. Imagine a guy who wants to demonstrate love to a woman, so he saves his money, but he keeps it a secret while he's saving. And
Yeah.
while he's keeping it a secret and keeping his distance and he's not proposing or whatever, he's saving up for it. She's mad at him for ignoring her.
Yeah,
But he's
communication.
doing the noble thing. He's waiting until he's ready to approach her. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how
Yeah.
I look at these boundaries I'm setting with people. I'm going to wait until my energy can handle your frequency. Right now, you trigger me. So I got to stay away from you. But eventually, I know I'm going to heal. I'm going to figure out that wounding and I'm going to be able to approach you and with actual gifts to give you instead of just out of obligation. So following these energetic frequencies in relationship is it's a part of entering the fifth dimension.
Well, it sure is an interesting conundrum. I mean, because you want them to try to understand too, but you can only do so much to get them to understand, right? So we get hung up in, well, we want them to be cool with what we're doing or cool with what we have done, but it's not always in the cards, right? And we get stuck on wanting them to understand why we did it or why we're doing it. And well, should I tell them? You mentioned the saving the money thing. Should I say something? Should I have said something? So I think we want to please everybody. We're people pleasers at heart, and that kind of can be our downfall sometimes to focus strictly on that and not the task at hand, really.
Yeah, and it's also a lesson in parenting. Parents don't get to be friends with their kids. I, for a long time, felt like a friend of my kids, and I recently got divorced. So now I have to be a completely different kind of mom. That's what my lawyer
Mhm.
said. And part of being a parent is knowing what's best for the child, whether they like it or not. And then when you are becoming a sovereign individual human being, you know your truth better than anyone else. And if someone else is distracting you from your truth, they need boundaries. And I don't need to explain it to anyone.
No,
My
and
responsibility is my truth and my expression of it and keeping it safe and sacred.
right, and at the same time, right, you don't need to push your truth upon to them. You can lay it out there and say, "Here it is. This is from my perspective," and that's about all you can do.
Absolutely. Because I would want the same from anyone else, right?
Yeah, the golden rule. It's so simple to follow, but if everybody did, it'd be a wonderful thing. But then everybody has to love themselves too, because some people, that golden rule, you treat others like you want to be treated. Some people they don't think highly of themselves, and they don't want to be treated that great, so they're going to treat other people not so greatly. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and when that happens, I just trust that the goddess has everything kept track of, and she's gonna let their karma play out in a way that works best for them. You know.
Yeah. That's all you can do, and let it go at that. But what kind of you mentioned we got to talking about Frank Zappa the other day. What kind of influences Frank Zappa had on you as far as your shamanism goes? I mean, I could go off on a whole show about that, but
Okay, I don't know that much about. I didn't listen to his music. I just remember in an interview or a song or something, he had an image where he basically had a toilet pouring into the television, like some
yeah,
hose or something, right? Was going
yeah,
from the like basically saying everything you're watching on TV is shit.
yeah. He's been saying
Okay.
it for years. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I made a video. I was actually that video where I mentioned that we talked about it from the reference was a recording I made on Mount Shasta.
Okay.
So I went to Mount Shasta for like 2 weeks, while my ex was with the kids, and I just had to kind of get out of the house. And they were saying up there that Frank Zappa was right that your TV is programming you. Okay,
Yeah.
your TV is distracting you from your own personal connection to source. So turn it off.
Well, they
And
don't.
that's basically as simple as it needs to be, right?
They don't call it a program for nothing, right? It's a program, and yeah, he was right. And I mean, he's like I told you, in a good way, he was way out there in left field in a good way. Yeah, he was a different kind of a cat, and way, 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 maybe a century ahead of his time in the way that he thought, right? I mean, but he got a lot of guff because his music was nasty, some of it, but it was just his personality and sense of humor coming through. The Pleiadians are a lot like he was with his sense of humor and his his very subtle sarcastic way and not so subtle sarcastic way of doing things. But he was right. He was very well spoken. He could have gone into politics if he would have wanted to. He was an amazing cat for sure. So Shasta, talk about your experience at Shasta. What is your overall, I've been down there, and of course you must have taken that 6 or 7 hour drive down I-5 to get there. Um, where you're at. What was your overall impressions? Had you been there before? Was that your only time there?
Okay, so I don't know. I am called to Shasta generally energetically. I just feel a pull. It's kind of distant, but it's just always kind of back there. And the more I've discussed it with friends and whatever considered the location to move to, I learned that it's the headquarters for Talos is
Yeah,
underneath Shasta physically. And Talos, I want to mention that briefly because maybe everybody doesn't know about that.
do it.
Okay, so this is what I understand, and us intuitive psychic people are channelers are trying to bring in the history that happened with Atlantis. Okay, we're all trying to figure out, piece together what was that, what was going on. What It's like this missing history lineage that we have, and from my understanding, Atlantis and Lemuria were both existing at the same time. And then there
Yep.
was some sort of conflict where they sunk
Yep.
into the ocean, which for me, I was
Nuclear
fascinated
conflict.
by
It was
the.
nuclear conflict. That was my channel, and I've had everything you had there, but it was a nuclear conflict that put them both down. But yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right, so I'll keep going. So, um, what they sunk and like the Bermuda Triangle kind of made sense to me because we can't explain that, but there's obviously some magnetic crystal under the ocean that's causing all that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Lemuria is had wise both of them had wise people, and I don't know who set up what later, but they both had wise intuitives that knew this was coming. Okay, they knew they were gonna be destroyed, and they got ready in time, and then they brought their civilizations underground to preserve the wisdom of that time, but to release it slowly until humans were ready to integrate that back again. Because the reason Atlantis fell was that their egos got too big. And this is funny because we were talking about boundaries. The reason Lemuria fell was they didn't have enough boundaries. They
True.
were
That's
just
very true.
giving everything away.
Yeah, at the end of it all, that's really that was probably their biggest issue, actually, you just touched on.
So what we're looking at from my perspective, what I've been channeling this year is that we're looking at Lemurian consciousness learning boundaries through the influence of the reptiles. The reptiles came onto the planet so the Lemurians could develop a backbone.
That's a good point. I like it. Perfect. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've just now thought of that recently too, something along those lines that I wondered why, but it all makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, good. And if my version doesn't quite, it doesn't matter. It's a story. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So
Yep.
Lemuria went underground. They have a headquarters in Talos, which is underneath Shasta. Okay. And then they can't just stay down there. There's layers of everything because we live in a fractal universe. So there's layers of everything. And they have an underground base, but then they have surface on the surface of the planet, um, secret societies that have communication with them still, right? And that's the secret societies that I'm learning about through Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus by Claire Hartsong, that book. That's the book I'm going to promote. She doesn't know anything about me, but I'm the biggest fan of that book. And I believe the Essenes, who I believe Jesus studied with as a mystery school back in Jerusalem, they are the surface level connection to the Lemurian wisdom underground. This is my belief. Okay. And the whole truth that they have to offer humanity is just barely, barely coming to the surface because the Gnostic Gospels that they found not until 1975, that was when it was safe on the surface of the planet for the true gnosis that Jesus lived by to be
Yeah.
offered to humanity.
Well, I was born that year, so It has to be.
Yeah, awesome. I know it's exciting. This is really fun. If you're curious about the truth and you're curious about revelation, this is a really great time to be alive, right?
It's really probably the most key time to be alive since the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, I would say, and I've said it before, right? It's a very fascinating time to be around, but that doesn't mean it's going to change overnight. I mean, the project never stops, right? We always keep evolving, and the inbox is never empty. But it really is a kind of a golden. Well, it doesn't seem like it at times, but it's a golden time to really be alive in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah, yeah. I think especially for us who have some sort of contracts to explore this topic, right?
Hmm. What have
Okay.
your Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to
Well, I
touch on
was
something.
just gonna say that so Shasta, when I was drawn to Shasta, I just have a soul connection to that whole story. And on Shasta is a lot of spiritual groups. Saint Germain is involved, who was the twin flame of Portia, which I don't know much about, but he's a big character in this ascension that's being supported on Shasta.
Yeah, very key aspect to this. If you're into his work, you know, it's a very spiritual area, and then you go over to the coast from there, the redwoods, that whole top corridor, Northern California, that top third is really got a lot of spiritual aspects too. There's a, you know, it's a different area. I don't know how much you explored into down there, but it's not. It's a very nice, pleasant place to go. It's not somewhere I'd want to screw around at night. I mean, there's a lot of weird things that happen there too. Being a police officer like I was and having some FBI contacts, I know that there's a lot of trafficking that goes out of there. But you know, where anything is great, there's going to be some kind of a negative to it too. That's just kind of the yin and the yang of it.
Yeah, I feel generally about everything regarding protection that if you start your day off calling on your guides to be with you throughout the day, that's how shamans protect themselves energetically. They ask for their guides to protect them. So, and your guides cannot help you until you give them permission. So
Right.
almost everywhere, if I was a single woman traveling by myself to Northern California. I was alone there for over 2 weeks, and I wasn't worried because I've already developed the habit of calling on my protection all the time. I have 5 kids. I've been alone with them a lot throughout my parenting life, and I've had to develop a really close relationship with Archangel Michael. He is my
Mhm.
nanny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I call on him to protect my kids all the time.
Right. And if you make smart decisions, I wasn't trying to paint a fear story about Northern California. I'm just saying it's not somewhere where you'd want to, being an outsider, you wouldn't want to go start, you know, at nighttime interacting with people and being stupid as far as like outside of who you're with or what you're there to do. You know what I mean? But that's the same thing with anywhere you go.
Oh yeah, yeah. There can be negative energies everywhere. I live in a really beautiful suburb of Portland, but we've brushed up with kidnapping in this little area too. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it is, and a lot of that kidnapping is organized. I mean, it's not just the perverted uncle that's driving around the you know, corner trying to pick up kids. There's too many that go missing, but that's for another topic, right? Other people have touched on that, and you know that's just kind of how it goes. So out there in Portland, how far are you from downtown Portland, actually, though?
I'm a 25-minute drive
About
south.
a 20, oh, okay, about a 25-minute drive. Okay, okay. Well, that's awesome. Shasta is incredible, definitely. Yeah, that whole Pacific Northwest corridor, for people that don't know it, you go, yeah, that northern third of California, Oregon, Washington, into British Columbia. A lot of really spiritually in tune places. Talos is a big one. You know, I've known of that for a long time. I don't know a lot about it, but I know that, you know, you're not the first person to talk about it being headquartered down there. Um, Extraterrestrials. Have you had any kind of a well, everything's extraterrestrial, interdimensional, extraterrestrial. They're all from another realm, and when you're from a higher dimension, you can see down into the other dimensions a lot better than a person in a lower dimension looking up, because things kind of, you know, things kind of bleed in and out of reality when you're looking up into other dimensions, right? And so, have you had a lot of contact or communication with extraterrestrials that you would consider from any particular star system or things of that nature?
Um, Everything I've done has been through channeling. I have not had any like psychic communication, like them
Mhm.
approaching me. I'm too scared to invite a ship to arrive.
Right.
Although I would like to go to Aseti. I think I could do it in a group, you know, that place.
Yeah, I know where
ECETI.
James Gillen. It's James's place up there. Yeah, it's right over the border in Washington, past Hood River. I think Hood River, Oregon's their closest place to them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is the closest town. But yeah, I would love to go up to. I've talked with him a few times over the years. I would like to go up to his ranch at some point.
Yeah, I
And
would be interested in that.
he has a pretty good thing going on there, and he keeps it. He one of his things that he had to overcome was he had an issue, and it's the same thing kind of that happened to this guy Billy Meyer over in Switzerland. He had people starting to come in, and he was being too easy with them and letting them kind of run the show and walk all over him. And he learned that if he kept doing that, the whole thing was going to be for naught. So he's kind of got a little bit more he's set his boundaries a lot better than it,
Smart.
because yeah, he's got a good heart and a good soul, and he just wants the best for everybody. But sometimes that doesn't always work. You get people that come up that are their conscious level isn't too bright, and they're just looking for somewhere to set up shop. And but yeah, he does have a wonderful thing going on there, and his story's amazing too, as far as how he awakened and what happened to him when he was a child, and all that. And I think that a lot of us have those kind of stories. Yeah, I've never put the intention out there myself either to contact these 30 collectives I have over the years here and there. They've all found me because we're also like a radio station. Our bodies are frequency like a radio station, and they can tune in through your pineal like your radio station. And so when they say be mindful of your thoughts, they're not trying to tell you to, oh, well, watch what you think, watch what you say. They're just trying to tell you that you're like a radio station. What you put out, people pick up on. Different entities and beings pick up all over the cosmos and in different dimensions. They pick up on that, and they can tune into you, right? So that kind of thing. That kind of thing happens. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't ask. I affectionately say I didn't ask for these fuckers to come into my life when they did. I was into politics. I did all this other stuff, but they did. And I'm glad they did. But it changes your life completely when you know for a fact that it's a real deal. It's when it's real, it's real, and it's different. And the energy, you have to really, if you're not right at the vibration, just to communicate with them, it makes it rough.
Yeah, it's like humanity has to go through a paradigm shift to accept the reality that ETs exist. And my story is that I have never really had supernatural experiences. My dad had an out of body experience, but everything I've done has come through logical. If this makes sense, so this is true. Everything, and so I'll just say that my introduction to ETs is in shamanism class. Was the first time I
Mhm.
heard about the Pleiadians, and I was like, "Oh, that's a weird word." And then I
Mhm.
didn't look into them right away. I was like, "That's a little too weird for me." I'm already getting used to like this is a Native American religion that I'm dealing with, so I could only handle so much difference a little bit at a time. But I knew
Absolutely.
the go ahead.
Go ahead. I said absolutely. The Pleiadians. Yeah, I have a story like that too about how that word. It was hearing that word and that triggered everything. But yeah, it was weird what I thought about the word. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it took me years. It wasn't until it was actually 2016 that I started looking into them again because of that election. I was like, "What is going on?" I couldn't go for either candidate. And I listened to Barbara Marciniak channeled the
Mhm.
Pleiadians about the Trump Clinton thing, and so that was the beginning of me going down conspiracy theories. And
I kind of
yeah,
went off the
right.
liked her back in the day, but Bringers of the Dawn was an epic book, and you're talking to a guy who's read the book 23 times, and I've listened to her do it on audio about 220. Her information was she was infusing too much of her human mind with it, and a little bit it was off as far as approximates, but you'd have to listen to it that many times to pick up on this shit from her. And then, yeah, then she just really kind of went off the rails though a little bit, and she just isn't very somebody that really gives back to the community or does anything like that. I mean, I don't really, but I would encourage everybody to check the Bringers of the Dawn out. For God's sake, it was a once in an epic lifetime download she was given.
Yeah, and I don't think I read it cover to cover. I just sort of listened to channeling on YouTube.
Yeah.
But they were very they were very instrumental in helping me discern developed my own personal discernment over the last, what, how many, 9 years has it been? And one thing that I remember from that was that she said the Pleiadians are tricksters, just like you're confirming today. They
Yes,
lie to you a little bit so that you don't get comfortable trusting what other people say. You have to constantly, even if
absolutely.
it's a high profile channel like, Bashar or Abraham Hicks, you still might not resonate with some of it.
Absolutely not. It's they do that. They have a very, very, very super witty, sarcastic sense of humor. Very witty. Very. It goes for most people. Their sense of humor and Pleiadian souls that have it, like it flies right over their head, or they don't get it. It's just in it. There's so many things that they do that you don't pick up on. It's a comment they make. That the Pleiadian collectives I channel are mostly all like that. They'll say things just to provoke, and I know they're doing it, and I just kind of shake my head and laugh because I know what they're doing, and people that aren't ready to hear it will be either creeped out by it or what did they mean, and because so they know exactly what they're doing when they do it, and it's not really to harm you, to deceive you, but I mean, if you're not ready to hear it, and yeah, if it doesn't, basically, there's the lesson right there, right? If you're not resonating with it, well, then don't listen to it.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, don't listen to it, and that might be part of the thing. If you're not ready to hear it, you're not ready to hear it. It's no judgment off their back, but they want you to be able to understand, and it ties into what you were talking about the backbone, right? There, hence, is the whole thing with people, with folks that are really soft spoken and sweet of the heart, and a lot of us just have had trouble standing up for ourselves, right? So it's that
Mhm.
there's that backbone, and that lack of backbone has cost us about as much as anything evil or dark has.
Right. Right.
So I mean that's just kind of the way that they are, right? And then you have like parental star races like the Arcturians and the Andromedans that are in that high ascended level. Those are the kind of races that had to oversee the Pleiadians while they were trying to get through their growth path. And they went through the same thing, though. They went through the same thing. We did wars after war after war after conflict after conflict after conflict, worse than ours, or worse than this planet has seen. And so they went through all that, right? Their parent race is actually the Lyrans, but the Lyrans were really busy with a long, drawn out war with Orion during this time. And so the Arcturians really helped to guide the Pleiadians in a lot of ways to get to where they are, to help humanity, right? I try to get people to understand the Pleiadians as a metaphor, if anything else, besides a civilization. Is they're a metaphor for everything that could be good about humanity. I mean, the Pleiadians are responsible for a lot of things in all of our cultures. I mean, they brought us everything from Wicca and witches to rainbows and bright colors, psychedelic colors, to all kinds of different facets of society. And they're infused in just about every culture that you find on the planet. If you go back into, ancient texts and things of that nature, there are references to the Seven Sisters in just about everywhere that I found. I mean, 75% overwhelmingly, and the others, a little bit as far as cultures go on Earth. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in Scandinavia or if you're in, wherever, or that person who's calling on the phone in there who, I hope they find their growth path interrupting the show like this. How dare they? But they're involved in everywhere from, South America to Scandinavia to, Europe, the UK, everywhere, right? They're involved in that culture. And the Bible even makes a reference to them as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm so curious to hear more about what people are downloading about them. But it's interesting that you mentioned Arcturians and Andromedans because those are the other two that were mentioned in my channeling. I channeled that Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, is Arcturian. And I
Mhm.
also channeled that marijuana came from Andromeda. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
it,
the
though. I don't have
Pleiadians.
confirmation outside of what I've been saying about either of those things.
Well, right. It makes sense because the Pleiadians channeled to me about 14 years ago that marijuana was indigenous, of course, to their planets, and it would make a lot of sense that it originated in Andromeda before then, right? And probably in some parts of Arcturus as well. But it would make sense that they passed it on or help when they were helping seed the Pleiades. That just went along with it, right? They don't like what they did tell me about it, though, is they don't like how it's processed and sprayed with a lot of GMOs here, and a lot of the mass-produced marijuana is, I would think. I mean, it sure seems like it to me. It's not the same as it used to be unless you get it organically. And it's not that it's stronger, I get that, but you can only get so stoned. Well, really, but it's a different kind of a feel to it. It's more of an anxiety-ridden type of a you can tell when it's been grown in some funky shit is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I have been asking more about sacred cannabis and how to use it in a sacred way. And of course, growing it yourself is ideal. But if you are going to get something from the store, you can always ask for sun grown um, flower and microdose. Everybody thinks they have to when I roll my own, I blend my marijuana with sage and mullein. I grind it all up and blend it, and then I make a blend with tobacco, sage, and mullein, and I put the marijuana at the front and the tobacco at the end, so that when I'm done, I'm not blasted. I'm just chill and mellow, because cannabis is a medicine of compassion. What I've channeled is that it helps you relax while you process the disassociation from your trauma.
Well, right, and it doesn't take a lot anymore, right? Because I mentioned the strength thing. Okay, where it does come into factors, you don't need a lot of it anymore. It isn't like back in the day of sitting around with a hookah and smoking a whole shitload of it, right? It's just, and people still will want to do that, but there's only so far you can get with it. You can only get so. I guess what I'm trying to say is really you can only get so stoned on it. You're not going to keep getting more and more and more inebriated, right? You'll get either go to sleep or you'll get a headache or whatever. It's not going to. But some people are obsessed with doing these dabs that are almost 100% THC, right? I know a guy who is obsessed with them, and if he's not doing them, he's talking about doing them, and he's got two nights together. He's getting ready to heat up. So it really is one of them things where a little bit of it can go a long way. And I really like the way you do it. It's really thought out well, and if you're going to use it in a ceremonial form, you don't need to down a whole bunch of it. Is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. Microdosing is the way to go. It's actually more effective because once you get blasted, your consciousness can't handle that level. So, microdosing is definitely the way to go. And I want to say, too, though, I've been specifically channeling the identities of Mary Magdalene
Hmm.
and, okay, my daughter's in the room and she wants my attention. Hang on one second.
No problem. We can take this time. You're tuned into Pleiadian and Angelic Rainbow Orbs YouTube channel, as well as we're on TikTok right now on the Larry Locken channel. We're on Facebook Live on the Pleiadian Angelic Rainbow Orbs page. We were on X, but X dropped out for some reason. I don't know. X is it's one of them things. I wish all my exes would move to Texas, but that's a whole nother story we'll touch on another day with Captain Larry. Um,
Okay,
so,
yeah, I took care of her. But I
yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
say that who specifically have I channeled besides Mary Magdalene? Who was it? Oh gosh, I can't remember right now. She'll come to me, but she's a she's one of the goddesses of the pagan tradition. But anyway, I can't believe I'm totally blanking who this is. But
Yeah.
anyway, they
Okay.
told me that there really is no harm, even if you're doing the artificial get blasted, not ideal pot. How much trouble are you really going to get into? Okay,
Not
maybe
a
there's psychosis for people who are really using the junk. Okay, but if you're microdosing, it's okay that before it becomes sacred to you, it's okay to explore the altered states of consciousness, even if they're just a little. It's way safer than alcohol, right?
way, way safer. And look, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is the worst, God forbid, the worst thing that can happen is you're going to get a headache. Okay. I mean, that's about the biggest drastic thing that could happen to you. So there's no harm in it. But I would, as far as dealing with consciousness and raising it a little bit, microdosing is probably with that more so than any drug is the call of order. Of course, I wouldn't want anybody to go out and take a whole shitload of LSD or mushrooms either. That's something, and that kind of stuff that's a little bit harder is not for everybody. All right. I haven't had any psychedelics. It was 30 years this last my 50th birthday. It was on my 20th birthday the last time I had any. And it's a LSD especially is really a young person's drug if you're ever going to experience it. It's not one of those things you want to try when you have any kind of responsibility because you're locked in. It's not like ayahuasca or DMT where it's a quick, intense, but it's quick and it's done, right? Imagine that ayahuasca feel or that DMT feeling, but for hours on end, and with the air is real liquidy and thick, and all your emotions are at once in their body peaking at the same time. That's kind of like what LSD is like. It's more of a chemical, but it's kind of it's sort of along those same lines, right? It's not like ayahuasca or DMT as far as the compound because one's natural, one's not, or peyote, mescaline from the cactus. They're all have their own different similarities, but their own differences as well, right? I don't know how much you've experienced with any of those others, or if you have at all. Have you ever had DMT?
Nothing outside of marijuana. I did have mushrooms once, but it
Yeah,
wasn't a major dose. It was a giggly dose, but I've
yeah.
never done anything else.
No, I hear you. I have never tried DMT. We didn't have it around when I was growing up and coming up. We had LSD and we had a lot of mushrooms. Oregon grows them plentiful out here. I mean, they're everywhere if you live in the right spots. But we did not have DMT or ayahuasca, so I've never had either. Um, you know, I've had LSD. We didn't even have ecstasy yet. I'd read about it in a magazine and was telling my friends about it. I read about it High Times. Oh, this drug in Hawaii, they're calling ecstasy, and they didn't believe me. I said, "Hey, man, this drug here," and they go, "Yeah, right." And then it came along after I'd gotten out of high school and things of that nature. It's kind of ecstasy is like an LSD methamphetamine hybrid, is what it is, which I had done both of those two together several times when I was 14, 15, 16. And so, yeah, they're a little bit more intense. I would stick with marijuana. There's no sense of really at this point you going into anything else really, unless it's directed under, a shaman that you really trust, right? Another shaman and in the right situation. But I wouldn't mess with LSD.
Yeah, I feel like we're evolving beyond those stronger experiences because the goal now for humans in consciousness expansion is to find everything within. You know, you like you said, they tune in. The extraterrestrials tune into our pineal glands, and
Mhm.
it's an antenna for us to receive information. But it's also that information can create ecstasy if you have the loving, expansive heart chakra in tune with your third eye. You can reach states of ecstasy and maintain them, so there's no need for hard drugs. In fact, I think doing the hard psychedelics, it's going to make it harder for you to believe you can do it without anything.
Well, it's not really needed anymore. I mean, children that have been born since about the early 1990s, these kids that this guy John White in a book called Homo Noeticus, they're different. They really don't need it at all, period, at all, at all, at all. Their pineal glands are pretty much born already open, the majority of them. So it's not really needed anymore. I mean, back in my day, there was no internet, there was nothing. I mean, there was a magazines here and there. So it was like our only gateway out of, because back then your life happened within your life. There wasn't any contact with anybody outside of your scope, right? Not unless you had a goddamn pen pal or somewhere from overseas, but that wasn't typical. So it's really not needed or necessary anymore at all. I mean, it's becoming really not necessary. If you want to have the experience, it's one thing, but it's not really necessary.
Yeah, everybody has their unique path. So, right and wrong, again, it's just up to the individual. I think these plant medicines help wake us up to altered states of consciousness. But in this lifetime, we're having an awakening, a spiritual awakening, where humans are going to be able to do everything, through metaphysical consciousness instead of physical herbs. So, it's nice as an introduction to like being out of your body or being in a strange time warp situation. And marijuana helps with comfort. There, it is powerful for. I would say, I personally plan to use marijuana in my healing journey and what I teach people because it's like relaxing and it makes you laugh and it's comforting. And until you are healed from the trauma of humanity, what we've all been through, until you've healed from that, it's okay to have a little help to feel good.
It is, and it's fascinating you brought up that as far as, the healing properties. Okay, this has been my experience with that as far as that goes, and I'm using about 15 different case studies that I've ran into, where I have found that it is really helpful to people is people that were never chronic users of it, right? That were never chronic users of it, and then they run into it middle life, a little bit older, right, to help with pain. Oh man, it can make them feel like they're on top of the world, better, in tune with things. But if you've been a chronic smoker of it your whole life, what I found, and this has just been, like I said, 15 different case studies I've done, it doesn't really help if you have been a chronic user of it and still continually to chronic use, or really a chronic user at any recent period up until that point, right? But if you haven't really ever been a chronic user of the stuff, it's like a wonder medicine. I watched it, let people walk that were hardly able to even walk anymore, that were elderly. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point because it's not a medicine that's supposed to be used by itself. It in order to overcome the trauma, we also need to work on the mindset that was established during the trauma as well. Once we work on the mindset, you can stop the triggering, traumatizing patterns in your mind that
yeah,
you're using the marijuana to comfort yourself from. So it's comforting, but when it works on you, it's helping your mind loosen its grip on the beliefs that are keeping it sick.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely so, right? It's just it can work wonders. Like I said, I've seen it let people walk that were having trouble that couldn't even hardly get up and stand up. But others that have used it their whole life and then they got a medical card for it before it was completely legal here, and it just it is what it is. Of course, I mean, I was okay. It was a good excuse to go get a card to smoke it if you wanted to smoke it. You know what I mean? But if you've been a chronic user of it and you're used to just trying to get as stoned as you possibly can, and that's the goal, it's not as productive as one might think it might be.
Or if you're just not doing the insight work, we all have to practice meditation. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say we all have to do anything, but meditation for me, I had to learn that my guides, I didn't have a meditation practice before I started a YouTube channel 2 years ago where I videotaped all my channeling, but over the last 6 months they've been like, "Kelly, you have to do it now. You have to start meditating because that's where you're really going to clean up your karma before it hits you in the physical. You can take care of it in your mind first." So if people are using marijuana to comfort them on a chronic basis for 20 years, they're not doing the insight work, you know?
Absolutely. No, that breaks it down what I was just rattling on and on trying to say. Exactly, that's what it does. And meditation can be in different forms for different people, right? I mean, everybody has their own way of doing it. It's you don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor 25 or 6 to 4 and and chant mantras forever to do it. You can it's a relaxation state you get into, right? And it can be at various forms of levels. It can be at different levels of trance. It
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, it can be at a very high level of trance, or it can be just at a very mild zone, but you're still aware of conscious reality going in on you. As long as there's not a bulldozer going on in the background or somebody mowing the lawn next door or whatever. The kids playing football in the front yard or in the front room. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
hard to go deep in meditation when you're first starting. And, Nana Anna, how she comes to me, the grandmother of Jesus, is she comes as a friend to meet me where I'm at and to help me take the baby steps in the direction of my higher self. And with meditation, I had a lot of resistance to sitting down, blocking out my responsibilities, closing my eyes, wasting 5 to 15 minutes with my eyes closed. Oh, come on. What is my breath doing? It's not doing anything.
yeah.
I had to get beyond that self-talk, and she was like, "It's okay, Kel. How about you don't start with 5 minutes of meditation, but you just decide what time of day you think meditation is a good activity, and then have a cup of coffee." It's like trick yourself into doing the habit change, you know?
Do you, yeah, do you think we get hung up too much on the techniques of it, right? Like you said, the 10 to 15 minutes of breathing, right? Do you think that sometimes we get so hung up on the technique aspect of it and all of that we even lose sight of what we're doing? I mean, it's because you're worried, am I doing this right? Am I breathing right? Am I sitting right? Do I got my hands folded right? Am
Absolutely.
I
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that she meets us where we're at as a friend. And she's like, okay, Kel, let's just look at you before we figure out what this meditation practice looks like for you. Let's just see what you already do in your life that is meditation. And I love hiking. I love going for walks. I love jogging. I love relaxation. I teach hypnobirthing. So, learning how to get women to enjoy relaxation is unfortunately something people have to learn again. So, you're right.
Mhm.
It can take on any form. It's just mindfulness practice, and the more you do it, the more it's going to look like the crisscross legged breathing thing. But in the beginning, you start where you are. You're a baby meditator, so you need a little distraction. You need a toy to get you through it, which could be a guided meditation or a forest, or um, just start with what you physically can do to start something. Take a baby step.
Well, you mentioned hiking, and it brought up another question I had. You mentioned the experience you had at Shasta. Have you had any spiritual experiences around Mount Hood or that revolve around Mount Hood up there? I know that's in your neck of the woods. You can't miss it if you're coming into Portland. It dwarfs the backdrop of the whole city.
Um, yeah, Mount Hood is gorgeous. I have not hiked very much around there, but I did spend some time over the last 3 years hiking the gorge. So the gorge is only an hour away from me, which has beautiful wildflowers. It's got views because you're basically on a cliff on the side of the Columbia River, right? So you've got
Right.
gorgeous views once you get to the top. And I did have an experience hiking up Dog Mountain where, okay, this is a good story. So the first I started hiking up when I was staying at Carson's Hot Springs. I just like went to go get lunch in Hood River. I stopped at Dog Mountain, but it was getting late. It was like 3 o'clock, so I didn't make it to the top. And some people were smoking pot on the way up, but I was like, I don't have time to come meet you.
Yep.
And then the next day, I was still at Carson spending the night, and I went back up again. And I was so curious what those pot smokers were up to the day before, so I went off the trail where they were, and they were harvesting or whatever
Wow.
amethyst crystals out of the side of the mountain.
Beautiful. Wow. That is awesome. Wow. Okay. They
Yeah.
weren't they weren't just having a big pot party in the middle of the trail. Yeah.
No, and the crystals were tiny, like clusters, like fairy size crystals. They weren't like large amethyst. They were tiny little, sandy size crystal. They were just really small. But it was kind of magical for me, right? That I know where it is right now. And I put it on Facebook. I was like, hey guys, I went up Dog Mountain, found these crystals. I put an X on the map. I said, this is where they are. So if anybody
I'm
wants to go up, you can contact me.
I'm not familiar with it. How far? I mean, are we talking in vicinity to Portland? Is it closer is it by Mount Hood? Is it by Bachelor? I mean, I know Adams is up by James's neck of the woods near City, but where is it? Whereabouts in around Portland is it? I mean, without giving
Okay.
away.
Yeah. So Carson's Hot Springs is along the Columbia River on the Washington side,
Okay.
near the Bridge of the Gods.
Hmm.
I am exploring the PCT trail because I want to own an eco village where hikers will camp on my property.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The kind of cities like that in a way too. The cities like that, right? And I think the Pacific Northwest is ripe for that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, we're big into nature out here.
It-
But I want to finish the Dog Mountain story. So I kept going up, right? I kept going up, and then I just like I pulled over the side to channel, and this lady came up with this dog, and I just feel like there's something about that lady that she came up right as I was channeling, and then she came back down right as I was done. And I feel like
Yeah.
I had protection from these beings that were there on the mountain with me, because got to the top, and there was a guy wearing a t-shirt that said, I love single moms. And here I am going through all this stuff being a single mom.
God. Well, I'm not laughing. I'm just saying that's God. I mean, even I'd be a little bit eerie of that.
Right? I feel like it was a wink from whatever supernatural spirit people or whatever is out there. They were just winking at me like, "We see what you're doing," because I've been channeling really, really powerful information for 2 years now. I know it's ahead of its time, and I've had to be really patient. And it's like the only confirmation I really get, because it's advanced from anything on YouTube right now. And the only confirmation I'm getting, besides it makes sense to me, is
Yeah.
those little things, those brushes of confirmation that are not physical. You can't prove it. You
Mhm.
can't videotape it and go, "Hey, look what happened. This guy was
Yeah,
wearing this
yeah.
T-shirt. It was perfect."
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know what? Even if you could, it wouldn't do any good anyway. You know what I mean? So you can't, and if two, I wouldn't worry. It wouldn't do you any good if you could.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't need to. I've just had to be really, really patient and isolated in this whole journey, you know?
Yeah, well, absolutely right. And that woman with the dog you were talking about by the mountain. I mean, who knows? You know, you might even could do a survey of that area, and right, nobody knows. She doesn't really exist there, but other people have seen. You know, certain spiritual people have seen her come by. You know, who knows who that could have been, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
something like that. That's what I feel. I was like, there's something about that lady because her dog barked at me and she said, he's really curious. And I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, what?
yeah.
Why would she say that? Why would a dog be curious about why I was sitting down on a log channeling, but I was like, I stopped channeling while I walked by.
It's an odd
And she
thing to
goes, my
say.
dog's really curious what you're doing over there.
Yeah, it's not an odd thing to say, but in the context, it kind of is, and those particular words exactly like that are kind of odd. It's yeah, it must have been a trippy experience.
Yeah, and I was already kind of I was at Carson's for 3 days, chilling in the hot springs and totally kinda, oxytocic levels were pretty high.
Mhm, mhm. Right, right, absolutely, absolutely, you know, and I mean, who knows that guy up there with that had that he had that, what did he say? "I love single moms." I mean, come on, what are the odds you're gonna find that exactly like that up there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and he had the biggest smile on his face, like, he was that's why he also stood out, was he was like, he's not glowing, like, with light, but the biggest smile, like, his joy in his face was like,
Yeah.
"I love life," and I was like, "That's not a real regular human."
Well, not at all, and let's face it, I mean, if that was his thing, getting into single moms, I mean, I can't imagine that that's, you know, if you were truly obsessed with finding one, that would be the place where you'd wanna go hang out with that, you know, advertising, right? I mean, up on that mountain.
Yeah, it was just personal synchronicity, you know?
No, absolutely so, you know, absolutely. Um, we've been at it about an hour now. Do you feel like there's anything you wanna cover that we haven't touched upon?
No, this has been great. Your questions are really prompting like the next part of the conversation. Like I feel like it was really fluid and I just feel like I'm kind of floating in time and space. No, I just maybe I'll just mention
Yeah.
an hour is good. I think I'll just mention that I have maybe 200 episodes over on YouTube at Mother Ascending or at Kelly Viola, and it's crazy. It's fascinating. I want people to watch it because there's magic and miracles in those videos, but I'm also scared because I think a lot of people are going to argue with me. I have to have
Well,
really
it's about
healthy
how you put it out there,
boundaries.
right? If you've just put it out there, you're not forcing it on people, right? So that's fine that you're just putting it out there, and we'll put a link to this. We'll put a link in the description when I send out this show. So again, repeat those places again. The YouTube channel.
Mother Ascending on
Okay.
YouTube, or like my personal handle is at Kelly Viola, KelliViola. And maybe you want to connect on Facebook. Kelly Spooner Gnain is my Facebook profile, and that's a really fun place to just send memes and videos or articles that I think are really relevant to the spiritual awakening on the planet.
Awesome. We'll put it in the link. And I mean, you have a separate handle name. Are you telling me that you have your YouTube channel, but it also has a handle name? Because I'm one of the only people I know that does that. And it's funny how I found out you could do that. Is that the deal with the YouTube channels? You have a handle name and the channel name?
I have searched it by both and I have found it by both. So at Kelly
Okay.
Viola is what I initially began YouTube with. So it's my personal private YouTube channel that I started in 2000, whatever. And
Yeah.
then when I started doing my videos and uploading those, I changed my title name to Mother
Yeah.
Ascending and I've searched both and I've been able to find it both ways.
Most people, I would promise you, they don't realize you can do that and have it separately. A lot of people have them both the same name. I did for years and years and years until this author, this lady who's a great author, Francesca Rose, and I were talking, and she's like, "Man, have you ever thought about using your name on your brand?" And I said, "Well, fuck, girl, I thought about it, but I never, it's a little late now." So like, you got to do it. You can have a separate handle name and you can have a separate channel name. And I'm like, okay, so I did. But yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that, but it's funny. You ran across that you could, and you do, and that's great. And I had to share that little nothing of a story that everybody's really, their upliftment and enlightenment are raised because of it. I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, we're
So
teaching everybody, the new earth way of doing things, and part of our learning is passing it on.
yeah, absolutely so, absolutely. So it's been really great, Kelly. I'll let you get back to your day. It's raining down here on the southern Oregon coast, and that's how it goes in Pacific Northwest. I always joke with people that it's dry, barren and dirty and dusty out here. Yeah, so come visit. You don't want to visit out here. It's nothing. I'm just kidding. It's gorgeous out here. I love the Pacific Northwest. Um, you know, till the day I disincarnate, and then probably for many more.
Well,
Kelly,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, this is yours truly, Rocken Larry Locken. I'll cut it real quick. If you want to find out anything about anything I've ever done on social media or anywhere, it'd take me forever to list them all. So you go to one place on Facebook, you can find the page Rocken Larry Locken's social media outlets. Locken is Locken. That's my last name, and Rocken is with an E too, not an I. Rocken Larry Locken's social media outlets. You'll see all the groups I've ever created on Facebook. The too many pages to really want to think about. And TikTok, hip hop, bit bop, and all the other things. Instagram, it's a scam. Everything. I'm on every eight and great and sky and yam and gram there is. So you can find that by just going to the Larry Locken channel. And most of them now, a lot of them I have surnames as well there, but you'll figure that out when you go to Rocken Larry Locken social media outlets. Yeah, and hit that like button, people. Call your friends and neighbors, tell them to come over and hit the like button. If you don't have a phone book, go to the library and get one. Start calling people if you need to. I'm kidding on that. But anyway, Kelly, thank you so much. And it has been my pleasure. And hey, we're going to say goodbye as we go off. We're going to give everybody a big cosmic dating game kiss. Mwah. Da, 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 da,
Mwah.
da, da. Okay. Yeah, we're off on Facebook Live. We're off on TikTok. Now, here's where I have this problem is closing all these out. Okay. Yep, goodbye to TikTok. Okay. All right, Kelly, I'm going to exit off of here, off of the YouTube channel, and then I will messenger, okay, real quick.
Okay, sure.
Okay.